My partner of 5 years declared, "I'm no longer drawn to you. I require an alpha." I responded, "I see." Then I took the position she desired her new alpha partner to receive at our firm. When she spotted me in the executive office, her expression went ashen as she understood I was now her new supervisor. My partner of 5 years, Zoya, terminated our relationship last Tuesday. We shared a home, so she had the courtesy to do it in person, but that's the only courtesy she demonstrated. She positioned me on the couch in the front room of the house I own and delivered a monologue that she had obviously been practicing. She informed me she cared for me as a human, but she wasn't romantically invested in me anymore. She mentioned that she had been sensing for a period that something was absent, and then she issued the crushing statement, "I'm simply not drawn to you anymore, Denver," she declared, regarding me with a kind of detached sympathy. "I've concluded I require a genuine alpha, somebody who assumes control, a real commander." The offense was so blunt, so patronizing that I didn't even experience fury at first. It was just illuminating. I've always been a reserved individual. I'm not the most vocal guy in the space. I don't boast. I don't feel the urge to control discussions. I lead through demonstration via capability. I resolve challenges. I construct systems that function. I had always believed she comprehended and appreciated that about me. Obviously, I was mistaken. She interpreted my calm assurance as frailty. I didn't debate with her. I didn't become protective. I simply observed her and anticipated the other shoe to fall because I understood there was more. She interpreted my quietness as an invitation to proceed. She admitted that she had been growing closer to someone else, a guy from our firm, Chad. For background, Zoya, Chad, and I all serve at the same large engineering corporation. I'm a senior systems designer. I create the back-end structures for our most intricate initiatives. Zoya is a project coordinator, so we operate in overlapping domains. And Chad is a senior sales planner. He's precisely the kind of person you'd imagine when you hear the term alpha used seriously. He's vocal, overtly self-assured, wears bold suits, and is excellent at delivering smooth presentations. He's all magnetism. The content, however, has always appeared dubious to me. Zoya went on and on about Chad's determination and his relentless intensity. And then she disclosed the real heart of it. For the last 2 months, a new significant position had been available at the firm, Director of Strategic Integration. It's a massive advancement, a command role created to connect the distance between the technical teams, project coordination, and sales planning. The new director would essentially be the supervisor of all 3 of our divisions. Zoya informed me, with a satisfied sense of enthusiasm, that Chad was the front-runner candidate. She confessed she'd been assisting him develop his proposals, supplying him insider details from the project coordination side to make his pitch appear stronger. She was totally invested in his achievement. She envisioned him securing this job as their springboard. They were going to be the new influential couple of the workplace. As she was informing me all this, I simply sat there. And when she was finally finished, after she had completely laid out why I was no longer sufficient for her, I observed her and stated in a perfectly steady voice, "I see." She appeared a little shocked by my absence of emotion, but she interpreted it as acknowledgement. She mentioned she would require a week or 2 to locate a new apartment. I simply agreed. Here's what she did not realize. While she and Chad were scheming his ascent, senior leadership had been having genuine concerns about him. They noticed what I noticed, a lot of shine, but not a lot of substance. His plans appeared good on a PowerPoint display, but they often disregarded critical technical constraints, which my team would then have to rush to correct. Because of this, about a month ago, the senior vice president, a man named Marcus, had discreetly contacted me. He informed me that while I wasn't the apparent choice from a sales angle, I was the only candidate who genuinely grasped how all the components of the firm actually connected together. He stated the firm required a commander who could produce outcomes, not just commitments. He presented me the director position. I was reluctant. I appreciate the hands-on work. I'm a designer, a creator. I was uncertain I desired to get into senior leadership and politics. I informed Marcus I needed some time to think about it. I didn't bring it up to Zoya because our relationship was already feeling strained, and I didn't want to introduce a complicated work dynamic to the situation. My reluctance, my desire to analyze things through rationally, was the very thing she interpreted as an absence of determination. But after her monologue, after she labeled me feeble and displayed her new alpha in front of me, all my reluctance disappeared. Declining the position now would confirm her entire distorted narrative. Taking it was the only action I had left. It was no longer about career advancement. It was about dignity. The following morning, I entered Marcus's office. He glanced up, shocked to see me. "Denver," he stated. "What's on your mind, Marcus?" I answered. "I've thought about your proposal. If it's still available, I accept." A huge smile of satisfaction spread across his expression. "That's the best information I've received all month," he stated, grasping my hand firmly. "We were hoping you'd reconsider. The formal announcement will go out in a company-wide email on Monday morning. Welcome aboard, Director." I spent the remainder of the day in a state of composed focus. When I arrived home, Zoya was there already organizing some of her belongings. She was humming. She informed me she was going to have a victorious dinner with Chad on Monday night after the big announcement. She even had the nerve to pat my shoulder and declare, "Don't worry, Denver. I've already discussed with Chad. Once he's director, he's going to ensure you're allocated to some of the most significant new initiatives. He really appreciates your technical abilities." I simply observed her and agreed. "That's considerate of you," I stated. "This weekend is peaceful. I've relocated her belongings from the master bedroom into the guest bedroom. She thinks it's just me requiring distance. She is blissfully unaware of the email that is scheduled to reach the entire firm's inbox at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. She believes she's attaching her wagon to a climbing star. She has no concept she's about to be introduced to her new supervisor. Update 1. Monday morning came with a strange sense of certainty. The atmosphere in the house was thick with a tense, uncomfortable silence. Zoya, however, appeared to be floating on a cloud of satisfied superiority. She was more communicative than she had been in months, discussing the victorious dinner she and Chad had arranged for that evening. As we were preparing for work, she stood in the entrance of the bathroom while I was shaving and offered me a piece of unwanted advice. "You know, Denver," she began, her tone overflowing with artificial concern. "You're a great designer. Probably the finest in the firm, but you simply don't have that command spark. You should really observe Chad. Notice how he dominates a space. It might benefit you in the long run." I just rinsed my razor, dried my face, and observed her in the mirror. "I'll consider that in mind," I stated. We traveled to the workplace in separate vehicles, a routine we had initiated a few weeks ago as the gap between us expanded. I arrived at my desk at 8:30, removed a few old documents, and prepared for the day. Zoya was at her workstation, chatting enthusiastically on the phone, no doubt with Chad. At precisely 9 a.m., a new email alert appeared on my screen. It did on everyone's. The subject line was straightforward. Announcement, new Director of Strategic Integration. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Instead, I observed Zoya. I saw her click open the email, her face alight with victorious anticipation. I saw her eyes scan the first line, and then I observed as every ounce of color vanished from her face. She went from tanned and radiant to a pale, sickly white in about 3 seconds. Her mouth fell slightly open. She blinked and reread the email. Then she reread it again. From across the workplace, I could see her hands start to shake. She slowly lifted her head, and her eyes scanned the space until they locked onto mine. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just held her stare with a perfectly neutral expression. The sight of me, composed and already back to work, appeared to be what broke her trance. She jumped up from her chair and marched towards my desk. Several heads turned to observe her. She was moving with so much intensity that she was practically shaking with fury. She stopped in front of my desk, her fists tightened. "What is this?" she hissed, her voice low and trembling. "This is some kind of prank, right? How did you do this? You took this from him." Her voice was climbing in volume, and she was creating a scene. People were openly watching now. This was the moment. This was where the new dynamic would be established. I slowly stood up, looking down at her as she was a few inches shorter than me. I kept my voice quiet, requiring her to lean in slightly to hear me, a subtle dominance move. "Zoya," I stated calmly, "this is neither the time nor the location for this discussion. My door is always open, but I expect you to conduct yourself professionally. We have a project status meeting scheduled for 10 o'clock. I'll see you in the main conference room. Then we can address your concerns about the project pipeline at that time." The color returned to her face in a hot, furious flush. She was speechless. She had come over to confront her ex-partner, the man she had just deemed a weakling. She was now being addressed as a subordinate by her new supervisor. She stood there for a few more seconds, sputtering before she appeared to recognize that everyone was observing her unprofessional display. She turned on her heel and stormed back to her desk across the facility. I could only imagine the breakdown Chad was experiencing. His entire plan, his entire persona at the firm was constructed on confidence and the impression of being the next in line. Now, he didn't just lose the position, he lost it to me. That evening, the confrontation at the house was precisely what I anticipated. She was waiting for me when I entered the door. She blamed me of being a calculating, spiteful snake. She stated, "I had orchestrated this all along to embarrass her." I let her vent until she exhausted her steam. When she was finished, I finally spoke. "I didn't do this to you, Zoya. I did this for myself. You made it very obvious what you value in a partner. You stated you desired an alpha, a commander, someone who assumes control. You made your selection based on your impression of power. It seems you just supported the wrong horse." I walked past her and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. "You're right about one thing, though." I continued my back to her. "The dynamic has shifted. It is totally inappropriate for you to be residing here anymore. This is my house. I require you to locate a new place to live." You have 1 week. The fight went out of her then, replaced by a dawning terror. The reality of her circumstance was crashing down on her all at once. Her alpha partner had failed. She had lost the influential couple dream, and now she was losing her home. Her strategy had not just failed, it had reversed in the most dramatic way imaginable. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since I was elevated, and the consequences have been both predictable and, in a way, gratifying. The first week was all about confirming my authority, and Zoya and Chad did not make it simple, but their attempts to weaken me only ended up solidifying my position. My first formal act as director was to schedule a meeting with the heads of all the divisions now under my supervision. This, of course, included Zoya representing her project coordination team and Chad representing sales planning. I wanted to examine the entire project pipeline to identify hazards and possibilities. Chad came into the meeting with his usual confidence, but it was fragile. He was attempting to act as if nothing had shifted. Zoya sat at the far end of the table, silent, refusing to make eye contact with me. The main topic of the meeting was a major new venture that Chad had been promoting for months. It was his baby, the foundation of his pitch for the director role. Zoya had been its biggest advocate, ensuring her project coordinators prioritized it. When it was Chad's turn to present, he put on his usual display. He walked us through a polished presentation filled with impressive-sounding terminology and optimistic forecasts. When he finished, he looked around the space expecting applause. Instead, I spoke. "Thank you, Chad. I stated evenly. The forecasts are certainly ambitious. However, I've spent the weekend examining the core architecture required to support this plan. Can you please turn to slide 17, where you outline the data integration process? He fumbled with the remote, a flicker of doubt on his face. He brought up the slide. As I see it, I continued, speaking to the entire space, your plan relies on real-time data synchronization between our legacy inventory system and the new cloud-based analytics platform. However, the legacy system's API has a hard query limit of 1,000 requests per hour. Your strategy, as outlined here, would require a minimum of 10,000 requests per hour during peak business times. The system as it currently exists cannot support this. It will fail. I wasn't combative, I just stated facts. I presented data. I laid out the core weakness in his entire plan. A weakness that anyone with deep technical knowledge would have seen, but which he in his sales-focused world had completely overlooked. The space was silent. Chad's face went red. He had no answer. He stammered something about his technical advisors assuring him it would work. Then your advisors were wrong, I stated simply. We need to shove this venture pending a complete architectural examination. I want a viable strategy on my desk in 2 weeks, not a PowerPoint deck. Zoya, please have your team deprioritize all resources allocated to this initiative and move them to the Phoenix Initiative effective immediately. Zoya just agreed, her face pale. She had to sit there and publicly dismantle the very initiative she had promoted, the one that was supposed to be her and Chad's ticket to the top. In one 10-minute exchange, I had revealed Chad's incompetence and reasserted control over the firm's direction, all by simply doing my job. Their next move was to try and gather support. Zoya began complaining to her work friends, people she used to have lunch with, about how uncomfortable and difficult I was making things. She heavily suggested that I was creating a hostile work atmosphere, using my new position to discipline her for our breakup. It reversed spectacularly. The people in our firm, especially on the technical side, value capability above all else. They had all seen Chad's flashy presentations and had all been required to deal with the messy reality of his flawed strategies. They respected my work. They saw me terminate a bad initiative and save the firm millions in wasted resources. They didn't see a spiteful ex-partner. They saw a capable commander cleaning house. Zoya's complaints just made her look unprofessional and immature. Then came the truly dirty trick. Defeated professionally, they decided to try and attack my standing. One of my old initiatives, a complex software update I had personally designed, was in its final deployment phase. Late one night last week, someone went into the system and modified a critical line of code. It was a subtle alteration, one that wouldn't cause an immediate crash, but would create a serious data corruption issue about a week down the line. It was designed to make it look like I had left a ticking bomb in the system right before my elevation. It was a direct attempt to make me look incompetent to senior leadership. It was a clumsy, desperate move. The next morning, during a routine check, I immediately noticed the irregularity in the code. It wasn't my work. The logic was sloppy. I didn't panic. I didn't even mention it to anyone at first. Instead, I went directly to our firm's cybersecurity logs. Every single alteration, every single login is tracked and timestamped. It took me less than an hour to find it. The unauthorized alteration was made at 10:47 p.m. the previous night. It was logged under a set of temporary administrative credentials, and the IP address from which the login occurred was traced directly to a workstation on the 4th floor, Chad's workstation. I now had concrete, undeniable proof of direct corporate sabotage. He wasn't just incompetent. He was a liability, and I had him. Final update. It has been 3 months since my elevation, and the final pieces of this chapter have fallen into place. The story of Chad and Zoya at our firm is officially over. After discovering the evidence of sabotage, I did not confront Chad or Zoya directly. That would have been messy and unprofessional. Instead, I acted like the director they blamed me of not being. I compiled my evidence, the cybersecurity log showing the IP address, the timestamp of the unauthorized alteration, the original code versus the modified code, and a brief factual summary of the potential damage it would have caused. Then, I scheduled a meeting with my supervisor, Marcus, and the head of human resources. I laid out the evidence calmly and objectively. I didn't frame it as a personal matter. I framed it as a serious and intentional breach of corporate security and professional conduct. I informed them. An employee in a senior role actively tried to sabotage a critical firm initiative. This represents a massive risk to our business. The reaction was precisely what you would expect from a major corporation facing a clear insider threat. HR launched a full formal inquiry immediately. Given the digital evidence, it was an open and shut case. Chad was called into a meeting with HR and legal. He apparently tried to deny it at first, but when they presented him with the logs tracing the action directly to his workstation at a time when security footage showed him in the facility, his story fell apart. He was terminated for cause effective immediately. He was escorted from the facility by security carrying his belongings in a cardboard box. Being fired for gross misconduct is a black mark on a career, one that is very challenging to recover from. The inquiry naturally led to Zoya. While there was no direct proof that she participated in the sabotage, her known relationship with Chad, her public display on the day of my elevation, and her complaints to colleagues about me creating a hostile atmosphere painted a very obvious picture. She was found to be a part of a pattern of unprofessional conduct that was contributing to a toxic work environment. She wasn't fired, but her fate was almost worse. She was given a final written warning and was laterally transferred to a different division, a bureaucratic wasteland of the firm that handles legacy accounts. Her project coordinator title remained, but the initiatives were meaningless. Her career advancement at the firm was permanently stalled. She was professionally isolated, working a dead-end job, stripped of any influence or status. The influential couple was finished. Chad was unemployed and humiliated. Zoya was sidelined and embarrassed. The grapevine, as always, filled in the rest. Chad is reportedly still struggling to locate a new position. The story of why he left our firm has, of course, made the rounds in our industry. Zoya lasted another month in her new role before she quietly resigned. She couldn't handle the daily embarrassment of her demotion, or the looks from former colleagues who knew the whole story. The last I heard, she had moved out of the city. As for me, I'm flourishing. My division is running more efficiently than ever. We've successfully launched 2 major initiatives and the team morale is high. The respect I get from my colleagues is earned not through loud talk or empty magnetism, but through steady command and proven outcomes. My work speaks for itself. Looking back, Zoya was right about one thing. She stated she required an alpha, but her concept of what that meant was completely wrong. She was drawn to the loudest, flashiest peacock in the space, mistaking his confidence for power. She failed to comprehend that real power, real command isn't about the noise you make. It's about the foundations you construct, the challenges you resolve, and the calm assurance that comes from knowing you are capable and in control of your own destiny. She went looking for her alpha, and in the end, she discovered one. She just never understood it was the man she was leaving behind.